And when you walk away from a conversation feeling disappointed, what book could you then go search out? And if you have a good routine, you have space for that book to then make your future life better.
Because you were paying attention to the moment that you needed to put routine into.
Exactly.
And then where your open spots are to fill with things that are making you grow into a person that's building a life you love to wake up to.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to The Great Conversation. I'm so glad that you're here with us, and we are talking about remembering so that you can build a life that you love to wake up to. And if you don't remember things, then how are you going to build a great life? And I don't know about you, but I forget a lot of stuff, and sometimes I feel like, where's my life going if I can't even remember it? What am I going to have at the end of my life if I can't remember? And so if you're anything like me and from the day-to-day you forget things, let's kind of talk about how we can start remembering a little bit better so that we feel like each day means something and we can build upon the day before.
Absolutely.
So
that's great.
I want to ask you, do you remember the very first time we ever met before? Like, we never had even set eyes on each other before, and then we met. Do you remember what I was wearing?
You were wearing black.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a completely black dress, but I remember you had a black skirt and you may have had a black or white top.
Okay. And do you remember what my hair was like?
It was short. It was because it was right after it was your first couple weeks of college.
Okay.
And you had just cut it really short, almost like a bob, as you would describe it.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you remember what I was wearing yesterday?
What were you wearing yesterday? Yes, you were wearing black pants and a white shirt.
So I don't even remember what I was wearing yesterday.
Maybe a blue shirt.
Okay, so it's crazy to think that like 7 years ago, it was actually more than that. We've been married for.
And the only reason I remember that is because we talk about we reminisce a lot about the first time we met.
Yeah. And
so you've kind of like filled me in on a lot of those details that I wouldn't have remembered until you told me.
Okay, but you did remember the gist of like what I was wearing. You were like, okay, you were wearing black and your hair was short, and you remember the conversation that we had. Yes, I remember that for sure. You remember that we talked about how muffins weren't really good for you, even though they tasted so good.
Yeah, basically.
But yet yesterday, it's like harder to remember. I can't even remember what I wore yesterday. So like the memory's so crazy like that. Why aren't we drinking?
Yeah, we need to pour.
Now?
Okay, we have some Glendelaw. I don't even know if that's how you officially say it, but I am a Flavier member, and this was one of the bottles for the bottle of the month.
All right, give us a pour.
And we're going to take a pour of that. All right, continue.
So that we can have this while we are talking about memory, and it is not going to affect our memory at all. So we're just having a little pour.
Exactly.
Okay, but my point is how it's crazy how we can remember things
Cheers.
So many years ago, and yet yesterday, I struggled to remember what I wore, what exactly I did. And if I did something that was like important or I needed to do something important, it's like, okay, I should have written that down because that was like, I needed to do that. And so our memories are super crazy like that. And so, recently I've been listening to this neuroscientist a lot, Lisa Genova, and she recently wrote a book called Remember. Okay. And she talks about just the way that the brain works, what we remember, what we don't, why, and is it worrisome that we would forget details.
Should we be concerned that we're not remembering things?
Right. Okay. And so she talks about how the big thing with memory is attention. You have to be paying attention to what you're doing to actually make a memory. Our eyes and brain are not just video cameras that everything that's happening around us, it's recording that. You have to mentally be paying attention. And so the day that we met 11 years ago, you were paying attention, and it was something new. It was something you hadn't seen before, and you liked it. And so you made a memory because it was something like exciting almost. Like there were chemicals being released in your brain and your body that were causing you to sear that into your mind a little bit more.
Some people have considered this, it's called like a pattern interruption.
Okay.
Is another way people say that. Like you're doing, and the way that you secure a memory is by a pattern interruption. Uh-huh. So that could be taking a note, it could be something massively different in your life, something like that.
Yeah, and so that moment, but whereas yesterday it was just kind of the mundane. It was
no pattern interruption.
I didn't even pay attention when I was getting dressed probably. I was just putting something on. Yeah. And I was thinking probably about are my children going to be coming in here asking me to get them something in a moment, and I just need to put something on real quick.
Yeah.
And so when we are living this life where every day can be filled with, we have to go to work, and we have to take care of our children, and we have to get food on the table, and we have to go pick up the dry cleaning if you still have your clothes dry cleaned, and all these things, and life just essentially happens to us, and then we end up at the end of our life and think, okay, I can't even remember what I did all of those years. You know, I think about my parents a lot of times. My mom will say, my brain is turning to mush and I can hardly remember things that I did. And that can be so sad to get to your older age and that be the thing that you say. And so my question today is, how can we spend more of our time decreasing what we're thinking about in the moment and really paying attention to what we're doing? And it can be so hard when we're filled with, like, you can check your email over and over and over. You can check text messages over and over and over. How do we pull back everything that our brain is thinking about as adults? Because, for example, we say this all the time, Bingley, you're so amazing that you remembered that.
Yeah.
Or that you learned that. Like, why does it seem like these children can remember so much more, or they can learn so much more quickly than we can? Well, I think it's because Bingley, my oldest son, he'll be 4 this year, he doesn't have to think about, what is he going to put on the table for dinner? What is he going to wear? Because I help him pick out his clothes. He doesn't have all of these things that really aren't important in his head. And so he can focus on, I need to learn the English language.
Let's stop.
And that's what I'm going to learn today.
Let's hit point number 1 in my head.
Okay.
Like you've taken me to point number 1. Point number 1 is routine. Routinize, so to speak, the things that don't matter.
Okay.
Right? So I've eaten the same thing for lunch every single day for years now.
Yeah.
So it's one less decision I have to make. For instance, Steve Jobs wore the exact same outfit every single day. There's scores of people who have set themselves in a routine. I wake up at the same time every day.
Yeah.
And so when you eliminate decisions, you eliminate thought, you eliminate worry. I think the reason we as humans don't learn much is because we're so consumed with worry that we never take time to learn. Okay. So there's one of my favorite lyrics comes from a song. She says, all my worry never added up to anything but time.
Okay.
And so it's this idea that, like, we're worried, and we think by worrying, we don't even think by worrying, but naturally by worrying, we're just consuming time. And then so the day goes by, all we did was worry, we didn't make an advancement in the great books. You know, I think this comes up because how do we remember what we read in the great books?
Right, exactly. That is exactly where this is going.
Yeah.
And not just the great books. We're reading several other books. You're reading business books. I'm reading some business books with you. We're reading different books about our spiritual growth. We read our Bibles in the morning. How many times we go away from our Bible and it's like, I don't even know what I read.
Well, because I'm worried about my day.
Important. Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking about what my day has. And so I have to literally, like, set back my day and push my day behind me, read, and then get in front of myself.
Right.
So you almost have to get out in front of the day.
Right. And so I think a lot of people will say that. They'll be like, man, I try to focus, but, like, my mind just keeps going somewhere else. And it is a habit. Like, we think that habits just have to do with, like, our physical, but habits are, like, our brain has to create a habit of focus. Focus is a discipline.
Yes.
And it then becomes a habit.
But it's not something that just happens out of internally. So this is a hack that I do. So on Shabbat, we call it, on our day of rest, we turn off our phones. I don't do any sort of business. But what I've allowed myself is a note card. And so during the day, so I don't think about business, so I don't think about what I have to do, even if it's just like, hey, I have to text my friend because we're going on a trip in a couple weeks. I have a note card and I write down all of those things.
Right.
So by the end of my day of rest, where I had no technology, no access to anything, I have a list of things that I get to do the next day.
Right. And she talks about this in her book, Lisa Genova. She says, don't be afraid to take notes. If it's on your mind,
then you remove it from your mind.
Write it down so you're not, like, constant, I need to remember that. I need to remember that. I need to remember that.
Yeah.
And then you're not even focusing on what you're actually doing because you're like,
when you're reading this, because you need to be super focused.
Yeah. Any of these great books, you have to be focused because this is something that truly takes discipline and focus because there's all these words. We're in poetry right now. So there's all these words and these concoctions of ideas that we're like, I don't know what I just read. I have to read that again.
Yeah.
I have to rethink that. I have to super focused. And in a home where we have children and there is so much going on in your business, it is incredibly difficult. And so I want to encourage myself and people that are watching that, kind of start with the smaller things of, okay, like I am going to just turn my phone on silent and put it away so that while I'm reading or while I'm talking to my children or talking to your spouse or somebody, like taking away those distractions so that it's not like, oh, your phone goes off and in the middle of a conversation that you're having with someone, you got to check your phone real quick. And then you go away and you're like, what did we talk about again? And I don't remember that. Yeah. And so, creating that memory of, okay, there was nothing else distracting me in the moment. I want to get to 85 and say, okay, I can actually look at physical things to help me remember because we're not going to remember everything. So even if we're focused.
Do you mean like memory, like activators? So like I look at
that's what I was just going to say.
And that plant is tied to this moment or this conversation I had?
Right. So not a plant, a journal or a photo album, things that we do on a daily basis that, we're not going to remember everything that happened at the end of today. So you, at the end of the day, write down what happened during the day, even just the mundane things. And so that, we joke how like, oh, I don't remember when we were dating, what exactly happened when we broke up? I literally
have it written down.
And I have a journal and we can like compare because that's the other thing about memory is that perspective changes what like a memory can actually be. And then also our brains can rewrite memories based off of conversations that we have had after the event. And so having a journal that you can write down what happened in the day, what you were thinking in that moment is really good to be able to look back on. And I'm not even talking about when we get to 85. Like maybe in a year, we want to be able to look back and say, okay, where were we in our parenting? Where were we in our marriage? Where were we in our business last year? How much have we grown? What are maybe some things that we wrote down that we should go back and look at because maybe we didn't accomplish?
Yeah. I mean, I'll unpack that. So like journaling often sounds like really overwhelming. Yeah. Like you're going to write out like emotional moments and exactly what you did and like these huge mountaintop victories. And that is one way to journal. People journal that way. But what I have found, because I can become very overwhelmed very quickly with like adding a big time commitment, I can journal in like 2 minutes flat or less. And basically, like you said, all I do is I have a yearly calendar. So it's like you're supposed to, like calendar out your week. I don't do that. Like I have this calendar and I write in what happened that day. And so I just have like these little sections and I just write, woke up, had tea, read, went to work. Like it literally, like it's that simple. And you write down
a little bit more specifics, like what did you read?
Sometimes, I will, for sure, I'll write what I read. But for the most part, like I'll write, had this cool memory with Bingley today, or like did this with Annabelle, or whatever. So like there's variety, but really it's just a habit. So when something fun does happen, or something that I want to remember does happen, I'm already in the habit of writing it down. Right. And then on a yearly basis, we write down what we expect to happen that year. And so then we can see, like you said, okay, let's look back last year. Where are we in our personal life? Where are we in our marriage? Where are we in our business? Where are we in our giving or our spiritual life? Like I have goals and ideas for the year.
And then we follow up with them at the end of the year and write in, okay, did we accomplish that? Or how did it change? And we kind of tweaked it.
Exactly. And sometimes I'll actually do like, so usually journals have like a monthly outlook or like a note section, and I'll write down what I want to see happen that month, or like ideas I just had, like, hey, I want to see this happen in my business by the summer. And so I won't do that in like the long-term yearly goals. I'll do that in just like a little note section for the month. And I can be like, wow, like that's what I wanted to do for that month. Did I get it? No. Okay, let's try and do it again next month.
Yeah. And I journal a little bit differently than you. I do a little bit more of the big moments.
Yes.
And highlights. I have journals for each one of my children. So I have 4 journals for them. And then I have my journal. And for my children, I am much more specific in journaling, like things that they've accomplished, when a tooth came in, when they said a certain word or how they said it, or when they learned something. And I try to, get a few times a month in each one of their journals of things that they're learning and growing. And whereas my journal is bigger moments, but then I also will just literally take a day to write down everything that happened that day in specifics, just to kind of paint a picture of where we were in life.
What life looks like that season.
Yeah, a little bit of an essay of like, today, from the time we woke up till the time we went to bed, I changed diapers, and like specifics about like when the diapers were changed and who was screaming in the background when I was changing that diaper, and what Bingley learned in his learning time. And so it really paints a picture, which brings me to kind of like where I keep track a little bit more is photo albums and then video albums. albums where I make a collage of like all of the videos of that child through the year and I put them together and we can sit down and watch like a year of that child's life. Those are
super fun. And they actually take a lot of commitment.
They
like
do.
It takes you like probably 3 or 4 hours to edit.
I'd say a couple days.
Does it really take? Okay, yeah. Okay, never mind then. Yeah, it takes way longer then. And these are things that like, this is like our hobbies. I think that's really like, so to kind of transition this on the idea of remembrance and remembering, like it is our hobby in essence to learn, remember, and create legacy in our lives.
Because part of
that's our mission. Like that's our vision of life.
Yeah, and part of remembering is repeating those thoughts over and over so that we're strengthening those neural connections of like, okay, we did this, but let's have this conversation again today and tomorrow and the next day and really sear that into our minds by repetition. Absolutely. Because memories that have been seared, because we never really lose memories, they're just like really down deep in our minds, and then there has to be something that stimulates that memory.
A scent, a taste, a word.
Right, exactly. And, I think the way that we live is a huge part of our memory. And again, this is talked about with neuroscientists and people want to know these things about like, okay, well, what about sleep? What about food? What about the way that you're like dealing with stress levels?
Yeah.
How does that play into how we remember? And we all want to value our minds because we feel like people that have lost their minds, it's such a tragic moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And so things that we do now in our 20s, and we're really already thinking about, okay, how can we strengthen our minds? How can we make sure that we stay as healthy as possible? And so I think you mentioned your food earlier, and food is a huge part of memory and how we are able to function in a day. And I'm not just talking about like, okay, which diet should I go on? I'm talking about the time of day that we're eating. So we intermittent fast. We make sure that we allow our bodies and our minds to rest for, 14 to 16, sometimes 18, because you do 18 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
And then when we go to eat, the things that we're eating, I think everyone knows that sugar, when you eat large amounts of sugar, it really decreases your ability to focus. And that's something that you and I are like, okay, we want to have focus in our day. And so even though it sounds like so much fun to go out with our friends or our family early on Saturday morning to get a cup of coffee and a cinnamon roll, we're like, okay, I know I'm going to feel like trash after that. But we'll get the cinnamon roll with you maybe later in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that's somewhere like building a life that we love to wake up to. We don't want to wake up in the morning and say, the first thing I'm going to do is drink a cup of coffee and put cinnamon roll into my body, because I value what's going to happen in today.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I can remember what happens today and that it's worth it.
I think what we talk about is we try and live for the future, not for the present. And like the future could be 10 minutes from now. Because like you think of like what you're saying is if I eat a cinnamon roll, I'm going to feel terrible. Not that a cinnamon roll is bad, but contextually, when you wake up off of a fast and you eat a cinnamon roll, it's going to spike you and then drop you. And so it's not like, oh, cinnamon roll's bad, because I'll eat one at 3 p.m. all day. Like after I've had like a nice little like lunch, I'm ready for cinnamon roll. Like, let's go. Like I'm not anti-sugar, anti-cinnamon roll, anti-ice cream. It's just like contextually, when does that food item best fit into me feeling good for the day? And I also think about the fact of like, how do we, where'd that thought go? I can't remember something. Isn't that funny? We're talking about memory and I can't remember.
I know, and I'm trying to get us back on track here.
Take it away. And
okay, so we drink tea, green tea a lot. Yep. I drink coffee, not as much as some people, but probably a lot more than you.
Tea is one of those things that I think is undervalued. Extremely undervalued, because we've had this conversation, and whether it's a psychological thing or a genetic thing, if I drink coffee in a row too many days, I start to have like depressed feelings. Whether it's like depression and anxiety, or it's just a certain stimulation that I experience. Where when I drink tea, I'm alert. I feel happy, which is a weird, like, I'm a pretty jovial, happy person as it is, but I can feel a fog when I have coffee too many days in a row. And so if you're somebody who's like, man, I need the energy, but like I feel weird, like just switch to like really good quality green tea, like from Stash or something like that, where you're drinking good organic tea for a month, and just see if that kind of shifts how you feel. You might just be getting the wrong type of caffeine. Like I don't really respond super well to coffee.
Yeah. And it's probably something else in the coffee. I mean, we do drink organic coffee, but maybe it's the higher concentration of caffeine, whereas the green tea has much less. Yeah. And just speaking from someone who did not drink tea before Ben and I started dating, I have learned to love it, and I do love the health benefits. And we're not talking about like herbal drinks. We're talking about green tea specifically.
Camellia sinensis is tea, not herbals, and rooibos and all that. Those are herbals. We're talking about tea here. Yes. Black tea, green tea, white tea.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right, soapbox.
So that's good. Yeah. And then the last thing that I just like kind of want to talk about and how it really refreshes our minds is our day of just completely resting.
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier where we just take time to get rid of all of our electronics. Mm-hmm. We don't do any like consuming during that day, so like not a lot of shopping. And this is just our personal this is how we feel we get the most rest. Never a day that has like heavy weight on our mind. Mm-hmm. That it is a day for our minds to rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has done wonders for our family, especially you. I've seen the biggest change in you.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I have time I feel like I can work harder during the week because I know like I will have that day where it's just investing in you guys so deeply. And, for me, it's like it also helps you to plan your week better because you know you're going to have rest. And so it's almost like you can be okay with the week being a little hectic because it does happen. Like we all have hectic weeks and hectic lives. I mean, we're trying to eliminate all the hecticness as much as possible, but at least we know that we have that day that will be very, very low key. Mm-hmm. Instead, it refreshes you and kickstarts your week. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our children love it. Like they just celebrate it and they yell it out when we start. And I think like this is where we get to the whole idea of like living for the future rather than the present. And that's kind of where it all wraps up for me is like these things are never easy. Like there's a lot of things that we do in our lives that aren't easy, but like they will make the days to come more enjoyable and more fruitful. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times we always joke like it feels easy and refreshing to go up and watch a movie and then our entire house falls apart because the boys start like throwing all their toys everywhere and it gets super messy and busy and crazy. And we're like, wow, like if we would have just like paid attention to them, it would have been a much better night. Mm-hmm. But we thought that easy win of the fun movie was the way to go. And we still do watch movies, but sometimes it's never as easy hopes to be. Mm-hmm. And so that's like really our mission is to really look towards the future more than the present in our actions that we take. Mm-hmm. That comes back to memory and everything.
It does. It comes back to memory and really reflecting on what has happened and how we could have done things differently.
Oh, I was going to say something about that.
Yeah. And you were never a person before we got married that would reminisce.
No.
You sometimes would, but then a lot of times I'd sit around and be like, do you remember when this happened? And you're like, yeah, kind of. And I'd be like filling you in on all the details.
Yeah.
And even on things that I needed you to remember, I was like, Ben, why did you say that to that person? That's not even how what we talked about.
I did that today.
Yeah. And you were like, I know, I'm just such a in the present person and I don't really spend time reflecting on how that could have been different in the moment because of how things happen. And that's where memory is so important. We have to remember how somebody responded before or the conversation that you had that could really inform my decision right now.
Yes.
And so reminiscing is something that we do a lot more of.
Yep.
And that has helped us grow into the future a little bit more. And then just also remembering because, okay, that needs to inform what I'm thinking and saying right now.
So I remember what I was going to say earlier.
Oh, good.
And that it goes right along with that, which is the fact of after I have a conversation, I always reflect how it went, what I said, what their response was, and what the result of the conversation provided. Because what I'll notice is I will say something or act a certain way and I'll be like, ooh, I didn't like how I acted in that way. And I didn't really get the feedback that I was expecting. And next time I had that conversation, could I draw them out more and really invest more in them rather than talk about myself? Or did I ask the right questions? And it's almost like that, self-reflective in a positive way.
Yeah.
And then the next conversation I have, I'm looking back into those mental notes that I took from the conversation that I had.
Yeah.
So I was on a call with a brand and I was kind of talked a lot. And what I realized is after I got off the call is I was I never asked them what their mission is, what their goal is for this quarter. And I was that was so stupid because I could have had a much better conversation if I would have asked 5 questions and then responded to the answers rather than tried to fill in the gap of what I thought they might want to hear.
Yeah.
And they'll often, people will often reveal to you what they want and what they're looking for in a conversation if you just ask enough questions.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that comes back to Dale Carnegie and his How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And he says do exactly that after you've had a conversation. But
reflect.
He actually recommends just by even someone else's testimony that he uses in the book, like actually write those things down.
Like write down what you didn't like that happened and what you did like and how people responded. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can actually go back and look at those notes. But I mean, you're really good about doing that, cataloging it yourself in your head. But
it would definitely be next level.
But that is so huge. And that can change how we interact with people in such a positive way. But like you said, it is a positive thing. But I think a lot of people go away from conversations
beating themselves up.
And they beat themselves up. It's more of the negative approach of like, wow, they didn't really respond to me the way that I wanted. Did I say something wrong? Like, maybe I'm just not interesting, or, those negative thoughts that we have about ourselves, instead of, okay, that didn't go as well as I wanted, or it just, was okay. What part did I have in it?
Okay, well, then this goes into a whole nother idea of like ammunition in a positive sense. So if you don't have like the right tools, I guess tools is a better word.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right tools, you don't know how to fix what disappointed you. And so that's where you get into reading books that help you understand the dynamics of conversation, how to win friends and influence people. Never Split the Difference by Voss is another one I'm reading right now. A mind-blowing book on negotiation, but it's more than just about negotiation to get what you want. It's more about like how to have quality conversations so that both parties walk away feeling like it was a positive exchange. Like it was a positive a human dynamic that was experienced between two people. Whether if you're like in a business deal or you're just like meeting up with a friend. Like I had coffee with a friend and both people left feeling like, wow, I loved that coffee date.
Yeah.
That is negotiation taking place. Does somebody feel heard? Does somebody feel listened to? Does somebody feel responded to? Or are you just in your own head waiting for the person to stop talking so you can then talk and tell them about your awesome family? Whatever.
Yeah.
So when you walk away from a conversation feeling disappointed, what book could you then go search out? And if you have a good routine, you have space for that book to then make your future life better.
Because you were paying attention to the moment that you needed to put routine into.
Exactly.
And then where your open spots are to fill with things that are making you grow into a person that's building a life you love to wake up to.
Absolutely. Like memory plays into all of this because if you walk away from the conversation and you don't remember you were disappointed, you can never grow.
Or if you're just like, I don't even remember.
I don't even know what happened.
We talked about.
What did we even talk about? Like you're so in your own head that you're distracted. The memory doesn't even take place.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the great conversation.
that was amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. I hope y'all found some value in this.
Comment below how you remember things. Do you have a journal? Do you just catalog things mentally? Are you the kind of person that's like, oh, his name's Bobby. Bobby loves pennies. Penny Bobby. And now I remember Bobby's name. Like, how do you do things in life to remember things?
I would love to know that because I am bad at remembering names.
Yeah, people are really good at it sometimes.
Let me know.
Anyway, cheers. I'm out. She still has some. We'll see you guys next time.